So I pay no attention to what the polls say. I don't even read the news. I'm not interested in it. I have one interest in this campaign, this constituency.
You don't read the news, Ian? You don't read the news?
No, I don't read any of the news. I'm not interested in what's going on in the national area.
If I tell you the Tory campaign's in a bit of trouble, that's news to you.
Couldn't care less.
In this campaign, you could split the anti-Tory vote, maybe significantly. You could help Iain Duncan Smith hang on, couldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fighting Iain Duncan Smith for a long time, and absolutely the primary aim of ours is still to win. And of course, I know many people are concerned about splitting the vote, and I've thought about it a lot. That's partly why I struggled with the decision to run independent.
Are you still struggling in your own mind with that?
Well, so many people in the local community just said, look, we don't want to vote for this person that's come in. We're really upset about how you've been treated. So if you don't run, we're not going to vote Labour anyway. And many people wrote to me and said that. So I think, and urged me to run independent. But yeah, I think the point about splitting the vote is that actually, as opposed to many other independents around the country, that I could win. And so vote for who you want, because we're going to get a Labour government. We're going to get a majority government. This is about having a local voice that will stand up with Labour at times and at other times push them to be more progressive and be a different voice, but will put this community first and won't have to toe the party line.
But if you split the Labour vote and help Iain Duncan Smith get back in, who you see as your chief opponent, politically, ideologically, would that be hurtful to you?
Of course, I don't want that, and that's why we're working so hard to get everyone behind the Faiza Shaheen campaign, and so many people in the community have volunteered, people that have never done politics before, kids, as young as 15, 16, coming out and supporting the campaign, even though they can't vote yet.
If you were to be re-elected, would you hope to get the Labour whip and rejoin the Labour family?
I don't see that, to be honest. I think having an independent voice, given that there's going to be this huge majority Labour government, and given how the Labour leadership is very strict about what people say and the treatment of anyone vaguely seen to be going against those lines, I think we'll need an independent voice. And honestly, the way I was treated and the lack of regard, I just have to have enough self-respect to say no. Okay. I'm not gonna.
So in part it's personal, and on another level, you're campaigning to make a super Labour majority just a little bit less super.
I'm arguing for democracy. I'm arguing for the fact that we need voices that say something different. We can't have just one line that isn't pushed back on, and I think it will be really interesting to have an independent voice and to see that, but also to be able to form coalitions with some of my old colleagues, but also the Lib Dems and the Greens and others in Parliament on particular issues. So, for instance, on proportional representation. Yeah. I was told I wasn't allowed to talk about proportional representation under the Labour Party, but I can talk about, electoral reform and people's votes counting. And there will be lots of issues like the 2-child benefit cap that I will be pushing back on really heavily. And more than that, if people talk to me about their issues here, I will be taking that straight to Parliament, because these are the people that I'm accountable to first and foremost.
But reform they're not a replacement for the Conservative Party, and you've seen what's been going on with them. My personal view is that if people want to vote reform, then they're almost certainly going to get Labour. That's what's going to happen across the country.
And the strong message from reform on an issue like migration and cross-channel asylum seekers and that sort of thing, I've been discussing this with the Reform candidate. We know the background to all of that. Their policies and ideas have been pretty authoritatively and independently and objectively described as impractical. Some that don't add up and all of that sort of thing. I won't invite you to go there necessarily, but when that comes up on the doorsteps and you've got someone who may shift over to Reform, what do you say to them?
Well, it's quite interesting. When you meet anybody who's talking about Reform who voted Conservative, they're thinking about that out of frustration. They really don't know most of the time what Reform even talk about. And that's the point about Reform. They are being a protest party without real evidence of any idea that they would govern or could govern. They don't care what they chuck out there because they know very well they're not likely to be in government. So the key thing here when you talk to them is always to point out, look, your vote will not deliver a Reform candidate as a Member of Parliament. Your vote will deliver a Labour MP. Now, almost everybody I talk to who's thinking of that certainly doesn't want a Labour MP here in this constituency. And so my point really is that it's trying to recognise that I always say to them, you should decide who you want to represent you as much as what you want to represent you, and go on the record of the individual. And my record stands for 32 years in defending my beliefs and also defending my constituents in what they need here.
Okay, electoral calculus, putting together their data, various opinion polls, they give Labour, I think it's a 96% chance of winning in this constituency. Are you ready to take that on the chin if it comes along as predicted?
You know, I don't read these things because they're all complete nonsense. Most of them run by people who fiddle with figures but never get hearts and minds, and people who actually make decisions about their lives, which electric calculus will never understand, frankly, or any of the others.
Yeah.
So I pay no attention to what the polls say. I don't even read the news. I'm not interested in it. I have one interest in this campaign: this constituency.
You don't read the news, Ian? You don't read the news?
I don't read any of the news. I'm not interested in what's going on in the national area.
If I tell you the Tory campaign's in a bit of trouble, that's news to you.
Couldn't care less. My point is it in trouble here? Answer is no. It's very strong. And I take the very simple point, which in life is important, which is only deal with the things that you can change. What you can't change is going to happen anyway, if it does or it doesn't. You change what's going on around you.
Are you concerned about the possibility in the future, maybe when times are tough, because that's what's been happening in Europe, you could see a rise of the populist right? If there's a Labour government, maybe they'd be dealing with it. Maybe you'd be dealing with it too.
Absolutely. The rise in the far right across Europe and other parts of the world is something for all of us to be concerned about, and all the more reason that we call out hate, we call out division in our political system as well as in our communities, and we work together to bring cohesive policy, community groups and so on together. And one thing I want to make sure that voters here in this constituency know, that no matter what I say or do, you may disagree with me, you may not like what I say or do, but you will never be scared of what I say or do. My actions won't ever make any community feel unsafe, and that's one of the ways I think we challenge the far right locally and the extremes in politics generally. I think we have to be really, really mindful, learning the lessons of history about how we challenge extremism, because actually most people in this country aren't extreme. They just want to get on with their lives and and make improvements to their lives. So my promise to the constituency, to the voters in this constituency, is I will listen, I will try and bring people together, but I will never support hate, and I will challenge hate wherever I see it.
Looking to the left, how do you deal with the challenge of Faiza Shaheen? I mean, is she a problem? What are you saying to the voters about her?
I just say that I talk about the Labour offer. I don't talk about the Conservative offer or anything.
Have you got much in common with her politically at all?
Probably some things, but I'm not sure. I don't know her personally, but I full-heartedly stand on the platform that she was standing on 5 weeks ago, which is a Labour platform, and that's what I will continue to do.
Yeah. And the so-called purge of left-wingers that we've seen just ahead of this campaign, were you supportive of what Keir Starmer and his team did about that?
I support Keir Starmer in eradicating issues around anti-Semitism, around kind of division in our communities. Yeah. And if and we are a broad church Labour Party, we have politics from all parts of the left. But if you're advocating or supporting or surrounding yourself by things that aren't supportive of our aims, particularly on anti-Semitism or hate or division, then actually Keir's right. We have to stamp that out. We can't be complacent on that.
Yeah, was she part of that?
I don't know. I don't know the reasons for her deselection.
Well, you read the papers. We all read the papers and see the news.
But we only hear one point of the story there, and I think actually the party have made a decision, and my role here isn't to comment on what happened before or her particular situation. My role here is to talk about the Labour offer to the constituents in this.
All the publicity about some of your candidates, quite a large number of them now, accused of offensive, quite often racist comments. Mm-hmm. How do those stories make you feel when you see them and hear them and read them?
Well, in any collection of people, there are some bad ones. Are they true supporters or are they implants? Like the alleged, I can't remember his name now, the actor who Channel 4 exposed. Huge
controversy about that particular case, and obviously Channel 4 denies any sort of skullduggery of that kind. But I'm talking about candidates, accredited candidates. Many of them have been suspended now.
On the Conservative side?
In your party, from your party.
And from the Conservative and Labour. So there are bad apples in all, isn't there, and everything. In fact, I did a hustings the other day, and one of the things came up about racism, and I said it's unacceptable, and I semi-quoted Martin Luther King Jr. That we should see not the colour of a person, but the character. And I was accused of being racist because I used the word colour. I mean, how extreme is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, look, tell me this, because you have to wind up, time always runs out.
Yeah.
Do you happen to be, you've got a pretty similar set of views in some ways to the sitting MP. Are you a fan of Iain Duncan Smith?
He's actually a member of our rugby club. So
Is he? You know him personally?
Not personally. I mean, he's an honorary member. I've got nothing against Iain Duncan Smith.
Do you like him? Are you a bit of an admirer?
Yes, he's done a lot for the community. He really has, the local community. And there is no denying that, and I wouldn't take that away from him at all, in any way, shape or form.
Because it may be that by standing and drawing votes away, Conservative former voters, you may be helping Labour get in here, mightn't you?
Well, people voting for Conservative may be helping Labour get in. At the moment, we stand as the second party. So take which side of the page you want to read. It's horses for courses, as they say.
Do you feel very confident that we'll see on Thursday the end of 30 years incumbency for Iain Duncan Smith here?
Well, it's turned into a very interesting election in Chingford and Woodford Green, and we've ended up in a situation where I feel like the election here has ended up being a bit of a microcosm of the country as a whole. We've got obviously a Conservative who has been here for a very long time, maybe a little bit out of energy, maybe a little bit out of ideas, fighting off a challenge from a Reform Party that they've stoked up but now can't control. So on paper, yes, you'd say they're probably in a degree of trouble. But then on the other hand, you have a left which isn't even in power yet and has already succumbed to its worst instincts around kind of infighting, purging its enemies, building circular firing squads, jockeying for position. All I'm trying to do is offer a good alternative. I'm just trying to offer good policies that resonate on the doorstep and will improve the lives of the residents of Chingford and Woodford Green. And I've got to hope that that's going to be a message that carries over.
Yeah, I mean, Are you seriously optimistic about actually pulling it off here? For Iain Duncan Smith to be removed, it would take a certain amount of tactical voting, which in practice, I suggest, means a lot of Liberal Democrats deserting you on the day and voting for the other lot, the red corner. That would have to happen.
I mean, look, I'm not a psephologist. It's not my.
You've studied this much.
Well, I know the word at least. I didn't get into it to try and predict what the outcome was going to be. At the end of the day, the response I'm getting on the doorstep has been really fantastic. People really liking what they're hearing about our policies, and people are just tired of all of the soap opera stuff. At the end of the day, all I'm doing is I'm going out and talking about things that matter in this area, things like Whips Cross Hospital, Broadmead Road Bridge, social care policies. And that's going over really well. People recognise that we've got an ambitious plan for this country. So, I'm hopeful.
But this does seem to be an area where tactical voting is not going to work in your favour.
Again, I can't really say what I think is going to necessarily happen on the polls on Thursday. I think that we'll all find out on Friday morning how things have worked out. To be honest, I think anybody who tries to make a really confident prediction about what's going to happen in Chingford and Woodford Green certainly knows a lot more than I do. I've seen a lot of bar charts being bandied around by the other campaigns, but I'm going to leave that to those. At the end of the day, I'm just here to talk policy.
Okay, well, you're doing it. What else can you do? You're the
Absolutely,
candidate.
yeah.
Although I haven't seen Ed Davey around here. Have you seen Ed Davey around here on a surfboard or a water slide? Whatever, a pogo stick for all I know. He hasn't been here, has he?
Well, we have very polluted waterways in Chingford, so it's not really the ideal place to go.
He quite likes polluted waters, doesn't he, to splash about in and complain about?
I mean, I think that if you're going to fall into something, you want something slightly cleaner than the Ching Brook.
Yeah.
We've ended up with, I think, something like 400 hours of raw sewage dumping into the Ching Brook over the last year.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go in it. I got asked, actually. The Waltham Forest Echo asked me if I'd fall off a boogie board for them. I said no, I don't want gills.
Yeah, serious question. You haven't had the kind of help from the party hierarchy that other target seats have. I mean, Ed Davey, volunteers being drafted in here from outside. Is that discouraging for you, or is it just your job to soldier on?
Look, my job at the end of the day is to represent good policy as best as I can, and I'm really happy to do that. I'm a local boy. I live in Waltham Forest. And I care really deeply about this community. I came here, I got involved because I think that we can do better. I think that the area's been really let down by its political representation. Not just Iain Duncan Smith, but the Labour-dominated councils in Waltham Forest and Redbridge. There's just too much neglect of really big, important issues, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to try and make things better.